Good morning, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. Welcome to TV Toastmasters Club 9523. The club is now in order. We have an exciting meeting today. It is our annual International Speech and Evaluation Contest, so you will get to see 5 or 4 fantastic speeches and several fantastic evaluations. This is a very important part of the Toastmasters community, so you are in for a treat. To begin with, I'd like to welcome several special guests, and we have a very big day today because we have as many guests as I can remember over the past 6 months, so it will be a very good meeting. I'd like to welcome Scott Lowe, Danielle Fackey, Jill Neal, Doug Nordhausen, Bob Meyer, Heather Quillen, Josh Quillen, the famous Veronica Sanford, and of course, Joe Schwerling. So as I said, today will be our evaluation and international speech contest, and I would like to welcome our contest chair, Laura Lee Gayfield. Please welcome Laura Lee.
Thank you, Darren. Welcome, fellow Toastmasters, a full house today in the studio and hopefully at your house as well, too. Today is our club-level spring contest for TV Toastmasters. The first part of today's meeting will be our 4 international speech participants who will try to inspire us and motivate themselves to move on to the Area 54 contest, which will be held on Tuesday, March 31st. After we have our 4 international speech contestants, then we will have a target speaker who will be providing a speech for our evaluation contestants today to give an evaluation, much like in our regular meeting where we have a speaker and a subsequent written and oral evaluation. But in this case, for the contest, we'll have multiple evaluators doing just the evaluating the one speaker. Then we will announce the winners and hand out certificates and do interviews so you can learn a little bit more about our contestants in today's meeting. Thank you very much for joining us, and I will get our contest started today by introducing our Toastmaster for today's contest, our president, Darren Henderson. Darren.
Thank you, Laura Lee. A couple of business things we need to take care of to begin with. Please turn off all cell phones, pagers, any other electronic devices. Also, I'd like to ask our chief judge, Tiffany Everett. Tiffany, have all contestants and judges been briefed?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Our next contestant will be Steve Ahrenholz. Angels Among Us. Angels Among Us, Steve Ahrenholz.
How many of you have had an experience where you found yourself in need, and out of nowhere, someone comes to your aid? In later reflection, you may think, this is more than a mere coincidence. In 1993, the group Alabama released their song entitled Angels Among Us on their Cheap Seats album. And that may be one explanation for what you have experienced. The English word angel comes from the Latin angelus, which is derived from the Greek word for messenger. It may be that a messenger has been sent to help us when we look back and see what has happened. December 21st, 1989, I had just finished my first semester back in graduate school. My wife Teresa and I were setting out on our 1,000-mile road trip to go home to Wisconsin for the holidays. My brother Al had been losing in his battle against a brain tumor for the past 6 months, and we thought that this might be his last holiday, so we wanted to make it as good a holiday season as we could. We set out on our 1,000-mile trip on a sub-zero winter morning from Fort Collins, Colorado. We drove up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, caught I-80, and began our journey across the prairies on that cold, blustery winter morning. There was nothing to hold the wind back except a few snowdrift-covered sagebrush and some leaning fence posts. Our car creaked and groaned as it hit every minor imperfection in the pavement. Our breath froze on the inside of the car windows. They never did defrost. It seemed like we were driving in a car that had no shock absorbers, the tires were square, and we're driving through a blast freezer. 600 miles later, we stopped for the night in Des Moines, Iowa. One of the thoughts that crossed my mind was, I should probably get up and start the car every hour through the night. We were going to be down in the double-digit sub-zero temperatures. The next morning, my car would not start, nor would anyone else's in the Des Moines area. The wait for AAA roadside assistance was 48 hours. As we were pondering what to do with our dilemma, a rather disheveled-looking man appeared from nowhere. He was wearing an ill-fitting coat that really didn't cover the bleavage on his backside. He had no hat, no boots, no gloves, and he was running around the parking lot of the hotel with his beast of a car. His mission was to jumpstart all of the hotel guests' cars. We didn't know where he came from, who he was, or why he wasn't frozen. And he wouldn't accept anything from us for the assistance that he provided. We did get home and had one of the best Christmases that we'd ever had. And it was Al's last Christmas. Looking ahead to another story involving winter, last month I drove up to Wisconsin for my sister's birthday. I had told her I wanted to drive out to the cemetery to see Mom and Dad's grave before I left the next morning to come home to Cincinnati. I didn't think we'd be gone very long, 25 or 30 minutes. And it was getting towards dusk, but we weren't going to be gone long. I didn't think about the fact that with the 5 feet of snowfall that they've had this winter and the drifting, that when we turned into the cemetery, the road may not stay as open once I get in and have to turn. And what happened was, we drove in just fine, but when I turned the corner, my rental car was beached on top of a snowdrift. Here we are, in the cemetery. Neither one of us brought our cell phones. Night is falling. The temperature was 10 degrees and it was falling. We had nothing to help dig us out. The front wheels are spinning. We have our hands to dig out the snow and a little driveway marker. That's it. And, you know, there was nobody there that could help us. Well, we thought we're going to have to get some help. So we trudged out of the cemetery and walked a short distance down the road to one of 2 bars that happened to be across the street from the church and grade school that we had attended when we were growing up. We walked into the bar and we looked like we'd been rolling around in the snow making snow angels. I had to announce to the small group of patrons at the bar that I need to call for some help because we're stuck in the cemetery. One of the gentlemen at the bar said, I have a truck and a tow strap, I can come and pull you out. I soon learned as Jack and I were driving the short distance to get my rental car out of the cemetery that he had gone to school with my brother some 35 years earlier at both the grade school where we went as well as high school. Well, a short time with Jack's truck and a tow strap, my car was out and we were back at the bar. He wouldn't accept anything from me for his gracious assistance, other than I could buy him a couple of beers. He said, I'm really glad I could help Al's brother and sister out. As we were driving back home, my sister said to me, you know, maybe Mom and Dad wanted to remind us that there are angels among us. So as the lyrics go in the song by the group Alabama, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from someone up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours to show us how to live, to teach us how to give, to guide us with the light of love. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Steve. Our third speaker is Rick Barron, MDD. MDD, Rick Barron.
Stop! Please close your eyes. Take a deep, relaxing breath. Get comfortable in your chair and reflect back over the significant events of your life. Go back 1 year, 5 years, 15 years or more. Is there a significant event that stands out in your thoughts, that has helped mold who you are and what you believe? Go ahead and open your eyes. There's really only one that stands out in my memory. Flip your calendar back to 1996. You may recall that was the year that Bill Clinton was re-elected president. But you probably don't know that that was the year that I became a grandfather. That's right. At the ripe old age of 33, I became a grandparent without having ever been a father. For those of you who are interested in skipping right over the hard part and going right to the fun part, pay close attention. Fall in love with someone who's already raised their family. Just prior to the birth, I was returning from Asia on a very long flight. So I had all kinds of time to think about how this event would affect my life. If I'd have taken the time to write down a list of all the positives and the negatives, sealed them in an envelope, and opened them here before you today, I'd have significantly underestimated the joys and overestimated the sorrows. When I landed, I called home to find out that they had already taken her to the hospital. I snatched my luggage, zoomed to the hospital to find out the contractions had stopped. So we waited and waited and waited until they finally sent us home. We came back the next day and continued the waiting process until 7:33 p.m. on November 19th. We were introduced to Mia Danielle Duncan for the very first time. Before she was even born, she taught me that no amount of hoping, wishing, or praying would bring her to us any sooner. That the only person that I had control over was me. Mia would come visit us every single weekend. And on those weekends, I would shoot a roll of film every single day. Looking at her photo album was kind of like time-lapse photography, as she grew up. Unfortunately, when Mia was 18 months old, her grandmother and I decided to separate and later divorce. Forget the furniture, who gets the baby? Fortunately, I was able to arrange joint custody. She got her on Saturdays, and I got her on Sundays. When Mia was 3 years old, we started season passes at Kings Island. She became my roller coaster buddy in the spring and the fall, and my water park buddy in the summertime. Those early days on the Beastie showed me that sometimes you have to step through the fear to get what you want. When she was 4, I was approved to take her on a 10-day trip to Southern California to visit my family. When boarding the plane, the pilot asked her if she wanted to tour the cockpit. She looked up at me, I looked down at her, and she shook her head no. I turned to the captain and said, "Of course we would." I got to tour the cockpit of a 737 with the awe of a 4-year-old. And I even got to sit in the captain's seat. Just goes to show that if you know what you want, you usually get it. We had an opportunity to do everything you could imagine, from renting paddle boats at Winton Woods to attending the Titanic exhibit at the Museum Center. And through it all, what I learned was that it's not what we did, it's that we did it together. Her sister Anna is 4 years younger, and when Anna was old enough to join us on Sunday afternoons, Mia invited her to join us, showing generosity in the relationship that we had shared together. When Anna needed a stand-in for her daddy at her first grade Father's Day celebration, who do you think she chose? I'll bet I was the only ex-step grandfather once removed in the room. But I'll also bet that I was the proudest one there. Last year, the girls moved to Florida, and I wondered how distance and time would affect our relationship. You know, sure, we had cell phones and text messaging and most recently video conferencing, but have you ever tried to have a conversation with an 11-year-old while she's multitasking? She was better at conversation when she was 3. I went down to surprise them for their birthdays in November. They thought they were getting a puppy. Boy, were they surprised when they saw me instead of the puppy. But I think it's safe to say that our relationship has stood the test of time. It hasn't all been fun and games, but throughout the years, I've learned one very important lesson, and that is, when I approach life with a positive attitude, it comes back to me reflected and magnified 100 times over. Use life's significant events for what they were intended to be, growth opportunities in disguise. Thank you. Mr. Toastmaster.
I'd like to thank all of our great speech contestants. That was a fantastic speech contest. The next portion of our contest will be the evaluation contest. In this portion, a target speaker will come up, give a speech, then our evaluation contestants will prepare evaluations, come back and evaluate that speaker. And I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, target speaker for this contest, Doug Nordhausen. Donate Life Ohio. Donate Life Ohio, Doug Nordhausen.
When I was 5 years old, my heroes were Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. Go forward a couple years, add some more Star Wars science fiction movies, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Yoda, more heroes for me. Friends at that age thought more like Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, popular musicians. That didn't work for me. I had the soft spot for Hollywood. As an adult, when I walk out of a movie, take Gran Torino, I don't come out of there and say, wow, Clint Eastwood, what a hero. I did come out and say, wow, Clint Eastwood, nice performance. So to me, as I've grown up, what a hero is, for me, has changed. I think of a hero as somebody who gives something or sacrifices for other people when they don't have to. The first responders, September 11th, folks in the military and the armed forces who sacrifice for each other and our country, they're heroes. Organ donors, to me, are heroes. Today I hope to persuade and inspire you to become an organ donor. If you are already an organ donor, I'd like to persuade you to have a conversation with your loved ones to reiterate your wishes. Can I just see a show of hands? How many people right now are organ donors? Thank you. Why would you want to be an organ donor? Well, there are 100,000 people waiting right now on transplant lists to receive organs. Of those folks, about 75,000 are waiting for kidneys. And ironically, the 75,000 waiting for kidneys, the better they manage their condition, if they maintain their dialysis appointments, don't drink alcohol, watch their weight, the longer they're going to stay on the transplant list. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Currently, the list is set up such that the more severe your medical need, the higher priority or the more likely you are to receive a transplant. However, that's being discussed to change that priority system. So if the altruistic reasons to be an organ donor to help someone aren't quite good enough, consider these proposed changes, which are basically to create an A priority list and a B priority list, with folks on the A list getting the higher priority. In order to get on that A list, you would have needed to decide and sign up to be an organ donor prior to being diagnosed with a condition that warrants you going on a transplant list. Said another way, if you choose not to be an organ donor and then you're diagnosed with a condition that warrants you to go on a transplant list, the fact that you had never signed up to be an organ donor is going to put you at the very bottom of the priority list. What are some reasons people don't become organ donors? Religious beliefs may be one of the reasons. Doing some internet research, so the internet is great, but this is internet research. There are only 3 faiths that have issues with organ donation: the Shinto faith, the Amish faith, and the Gypsy faith. So the odds are your faith is not only going to support organ donation, they're going to encourage it. And by all means, don't trust me or the internet. Have a conversation with your religious leaders. Another reason people don't become organ donors, it's not necessarily a fun topic to think about, our own death. It is perhaps more fun to think about either the past, great memories of our family and great times and friends, or looking ahead to the future, which I do and we all do. Hey, I'm looking forward to lunch or dinner or the end of the week. If you're a young person, the list goes on. Getting into high school, getting your driver's license, getting into college, getting your first apartment, getting your first job, getting married, having a kid, getting a better job, promotion, vacation. We all like to live either in the future or sometimes the past, and we forget to live in the present because we take it for granted. And the fact is, we shouldn't take it for granted because you never know when you're going to die, and we all will die. Last week, a plane crashed in New York City, and it's obviously tragic for the people on the plane, but it landed on a house and killed somebody in their home, very unexpectedly. More commonly, automobile accidents and medical situations kill people with very little notice every day. Thinking about our own death and what you would like to happen isn't a bad thing. It just takes a little bit of courage to go ahead and plan out what you'd like to happen. And also to appreciate your life in the moment. Perhaps the biggest reason people don't become organ donors, they don't discuss it with their family. You can go ahead and check the box on your driver's license that indicates, yes, you'd like to be an organ donor. But your family has the right to overrule your decision. They're going to be stressed out they're going to be thinking about grieving, planning a memorial service, perhaps not thinking about altruistic organ donation. If they don't remember having a conversation with you where you expressly shared your wishes, they may not honor that checkbox on the driver's license. Give you a specific example, my father died December of 2007, about a year and a half ago. About a half an hour after his death, the hospice nurse approached me and said, "Would your father like to be an organ donor?" Caught me completely off guard. He died from lung cancer. He had chronic heart failure, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, atrial fibrillation, glaucoma. I wasn't expecting that question. And yet they explained they could still use his corneas. So I thought back. I remember he had checked the box on his driver's license, yes, I'd like to be an organ donor. But my first thought was, hey, I need to plan the service. I don't want to deal with this hassle, expense. This isn't fun. A little bit more reflection, though, I remembered a conversation with my father where he specifically told me, hey, I'd like to be an organ donor. And that tipped the scales for me, and I told the hospice folks, yeah, he'd like to be an organ donor. It added no difficulty, no expense, absolutely no complication to the process. I'd like to share a letter I received 3 weeks after his death. It's from Cincinnati Eye Bank. Dear Mr. Nordhausen, our deepest sympathy and sincerest thanks to you and the family of your father, Richard, for your thoughtfulness and consideration of others at a time of extreme personal loss. We hope you'll be pleased to know that others have received the benefit of your wonderful gift. The eyes of your father gave sight to those whose sight was failing, improving their lives beyond measure. These patients and their eye surgeons have asked me to express to you their appreciation for your contribution to their work in sight restoration. We hope this letter gives you some comfort by showing the difference your gift can make for others. It did give me comfort, quite a bit, and I was very glad to have made that decision. If you would like to update your preferences for your driver's license, there's a website you can go to. It's donatelifeohio.org. It ties into the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles, and you can update your preferences and print out a card. More importantly, though, I would encourage you to have a conversation with your family and let them know that, yes, you would like to be an organ donor. I'd like to close with 2 quotes. One is from a renowned Spanish author, Miguel de Cervantes. Great persons are able to do great kindnesses. And the other quote is from an organ donation website. It's an organ donor's mother. And the quote is, "A few months before her death, my daughter and I went to get her state identification card. My daughter was asked if she wanted to be an organ donor, to which she immediately replied, yes. My daughter saw me cringe at the thought of death and donation. Her exact words were, 'Maybe I could help someone see. Why wouldn't you want to do that?'" It's from Deborah, a donor mom. A hero is someone who helps when they don't have to. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Doug. We will begin our contest with our first contestant. Please welcome Rick Barron.
Thank you, Doug, for the opportunity to evaluate your speech, Donate Life Ohio. I had a chance to reflect myself about why am I an organ donor? That checkbox on the license, why did I sign it? And it took me back to my college days where one of my roommates would actually harvest eyes for the eye bank. It was his job to get that call in the middle of the night to go out to the eye bank and harvest eyes in Cleveland. So I got to experience firsthand from him the change that he was able to make. And what I understood was that that process was a very emotional process, a decision that people made on emotion. And what I would have liked to have seen was more emotion out of your speech. It's a very difficult topic to talk about, but I think there's an opportunity where you could have brought a lot more emotion, both physically, tonal, and in the stories, I think, that you told, was an opportunity to use emotion to do that. It's clear to me that it was well researched, that you made it personal through the discussion with your father, so I really enjoyed that. The intro left me a little bit wondering, though. The discussion, starting off with the discussion on heroes, I was like, where are we going with this? You finally were able to kind of tie it back for me, and I said, oh, okay, I got it here. So maybe something, I don't know, there was something at the beginning that I kind of was, I'm not sure where he's going with this. And you caught back up with me, so I'm like, okay, I'm back in the picture now. The whole discussion around why not donate, I found myself giving myself excuses to uncheck the box. Going, do I fit any of these excuses as to why I would choose not to donate? Is there a religious issue? Is there a family issue? Is there some kind of other issue? So I'm not clear that I would have even brought that up in the topic about why people choose not to donate. That it was not something that, that added value for me during the process of your speech. I liked the way you related it personally, but I would have liked to see more stories like you did at the end with the mother and daughter, the impact that that organ donation has had. That I've found that people make choices emotionally and they justify them intellectually. So if you can help me get emotionally tied with what I'm trying to do, and then maybe I will go in and I will intellectually decide to make the choice based on the emotion that you've created for me. I like the tie back at the end to the introduction with the heroes and the quotes that you used to close. Very good. It was a fabulous speech. Thank you for coming. Mr. Toastmaster?
Our next contestant in the evaluation contest is Sheila Mudd Baker.
Well, thank you, Doug. Great speech. One of the things I really loved about this speech is it was important. A lot of people give speeches about things that might be important, that could be important, that are philosophically possibly important, but this is something that means a great deal to everyone that you will ever know in your lifetime that needs a transplant. Think about the children who need hearts. Think about the adults who need kidneys. Think about the people who need livers. All of these organs are so important. Skin, all the burn victims that need skin. Now, I personally don't want to give these up until I'm dead, but I understand that when I die, I will not have use for this body anymore. And Doug emphasized that everyone who gives is a hero. Not just firefighters, not just police officers, not rescue workers, but just everyday people who drive cars or who thought about signing or making a little X on their driver's license. What I also liked about Doug's speech was that he gave real numbers. 75,000 people are waiting for kidneys. He had a proposed change that told us one of the proposals that would make it vital for all of us to want to give our organs. That is, you probably are going to go low on the priority list. But even if you weren't thinking about that, why wouldn't you want to give? I did like, too, that Doug gave all of the reasons why you might not want to give and then overcame those objections. I also loved the call to action at the end. Now, what would I have done differently? That's a good question whenever we do these. One of the things that I would have changed was the quote. You had a quote at the beginning and a quote at the end. And believe it or not, I wrote the quote down at the beginning and you paraphrased the quote at the end. You didn't give exactly the same quote. And it jarred me because you're going to have part of your audience is going to be writing every quote down because I want to look it up. I'm one of those people. So I was jarred by the fact that you had said one who sacrifices but doesn't have to as the first quote, and then you changed it one who helps but doesn't have to. And I thought, that's a different quote, even though, I mean, there's one thing to sacrifice and another one to help. And you also had a few pauses that kind of threw me. The pauses didn't emphasize anything. They were just pauses. And it may have been that you were a little lost, or you thought, okay, where do I move on to the next section? But in any event, pauses should have a dramatic reason. So, all in all, wonderful speech, really important. I'd like to see you give that more in the community. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Sheila. Our next contestant in the evaluation contest is Don Wess. Please welcome Don Wess.
Doug, I enjoyed your speech. It was great. The opening grabbed our attention right away. You began talking about heroes and different kinds of heroes, and kind of got more to the point when you were saying your real heroes are those who sacrifice in some way for their fellow human beings. So I appreciated that. Your voice was clear, well modulated. Your presence was excellent. You made a good stage presence, and gestures were good. Thought process was logical, coherent. The speech flowed well from the opening to the conclusion. It was goal-oriented. You kind of stayed on that topic of persuading people to be donors, and you gave lots of good examples in that process about donors and about recipients. Particular examples that stood out were a very personal example of your dad being a donor, and the consequences of that, the very positive feelings that you elicited from everybody in terms of the good that comes from being a donor. And then a very practical example of the website where you can go to explore the matter in a practical way and being a donor oneself. So in conclusion, again, the speech was very informative and persuasive. It stayed on the topic. As far as any criticism, don't have any, really. Everyone can improve in their speech, delivery, whatever, unless you're, who was it, Patrick Henry? I guess there was no room for improvement. But I would just say, just do more of the same and continue to grow and develop as a speaker. Thank you.
Our next contestant in the evaluation contest is Jerome Manigan.
Thank you.
Doug and fellow Toastmasters, I want to thank you, Doug, for your very excellent presentation. It was very informative, and it certainly provided an opportunity for me to stop and think about how I can be a hero. Most of us think of doing things that receive a lot of attention, notice, and praise. But what you have offered is an opportunity to be a hero in a very quiet, in a very meaningful way. And I'm very grateful to you for encouraging me to rethink how I can have an impact, a definite value to someone's life. And I assure you that I will be making a change to my vehicle registration. Now, I want to talk very specifically about your presentation. In listening to you, I was listening to see if you had a beginning, a middle, and a closing for your speech, and you did. Your speech effectively answered the essential questions: who, what, when, where, how, and why. I was looking for vocalization. I wanted to hear how well you vocalized. Was there variety? Was there interest? Was there tonality? Was there color in your speech? I wanted to see audience reaction to what you had to say. I also was looking at your appearance, your dress, how you looked in front of the audience. These are the things that I came up with. I think that the audience reacted to you in very quiet, very thoughtful ways, because your speech was of that nature, and it required one to hear and to think about what you were saying. So I think that in that regard you did an excellent job. Your vocalization, there were times when I wish you may have been a bit more expressive, but generally I think that your vocalization was very good. Your hand gestures, I thought that those were good too. But I did have a problem with you just standing there. Maybe a little movement would have been helpful and would have called me to pay even more attention to what you had to say. Your dress, it was fine. We live in a casual world. But I do like for my formal presenters to have on shirt, tie. Now, are there any recommendations? Of course there are recommendations. One of them would be to be a bit more vocal with your presentation, all right? And after that, probably not. Very great speech. Thank you very much.
Our next contestant in the evaluation contest is Carol Kormelink.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, our most welcome guests in the audience and at home at TV Toastmasters, and especially Doug. I liked your speech, Doug, because it was informative about a subject I didn't really know a lot about, and your passion really drove home the need to take care of this now and not wait, because you never know when your life on this earth is going to end, and be prepared for it. And you mentioned the plane crash in Buffalo, and I was just hearing about the passenger on the plane. One was a grandmother going to the grandson or the granddaughter's kindergarten party, and another was going to a wedding, and they were all planning other things when their life ended. So I thought it was very interesting on the subject matter that you chose, and I thought you had very good segues between the points on how they should have an A and a B list, and how that would change where you hit on that. And you are right that your lifestyle does have a lot to do with your health, and that should be taken into account for people having organs donated. And I thought your eye contact was very good as you went around the room, and several times I thought you were talking directly to me. I thought you were having a conversation with me. I guess it was because I don't know much about the subject. But I think that this speech has probably helped a lot of people with thinking about giving organ donation and helping other people to live on, that you will live on in other people. And there's one thing that you might do a little better if you were to do this speech or any other speech. When you ask a question of the audience, if you want to connect more heart to heart with the audience, instead of saying how many, because you're getting a number, if you say, are you an organ donor? And then you're connecting heart to heart with each person who is an organ donor. And that might be one little improvement that you could make. I like the information that you brought at the end. You tied the end back to the beginning, that a hero is someone who helps when they don't have to. And I thought that was a very good definition of a hero. I enjoyed your speech, and I hope to hear more from you in the future. Thank you, Doug. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. Our next contestant in the evaluation contest is Gary Reece.
Doug Nordhausen, where are you? What a great topic to select to motivate and inspire everybody. This was a slam dunk in terms of that, because it all makes sense. It's logical, makes sense. I liked how you challenged us to lift ourselves up to the next level and become altruistic. And by the way, that's, besides believage, that's the next best word I heard today was altruistic. I did like how you challenged us to raise ourselves up to that next level and to do what needed to be done to help other people. Made sense to me. I'm going to give you two things that I think would help this presentation. On a smaller sense, you used great hand signals right off the very bat. When I was 5 years old, my favorite characters were Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. You could have easily even changed that. My favorite characters were Mr. Kirk and Mr. Spock. And gone to the Vulcan sign. I loved the quotes that you gave, especially the last one about being a hero. A hero is somebody who does something even when they don't have to. It was great. The last thing I want to help you with on making this presentation even better, and this is something that will make you a better speaker overall. For about 90% of the presentation, you were monotone. You had the same decibel level, the same emotional level. Get me to believe that what you're saying you believe in, that you're convinced on this, that this is the right thing to do. Doggone it, you need to raise yourself up. You need to give these organs. People out there need them. Convince me that you believe what you're talking about, and that'll give me a better chance of inspiring me to do what needs to be done, to buy into your presentation. Great presentation, and I look forward to hearing from you again.
Our final contestant in the evaluation contest is Steve Ahrenholz.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and Doug. Good speech. I really enjoyed it. When you were talking about Captain Kirk and Dr. Spock, I thought, I remember watching those shows and all the things that they could do. It was great. And I thought the way you tied it in with organ donation was excellent. Your theme that we kept hearing throughout the speech was about heroes, but different types of heroes. And one of the other things that I really liked was at the very end when you had your quotes and you left us with, a hero is someone who helps when they don't have to. A couple of things that I would like to provide to you for consideration in future speeches, and a couple of these are things that I struggle with myself. I'd have liked to have heard a little more vocal variety. You did demonstrate this when you were relaying to us a conversation you'd had with your father, and that he had told you, hey, I'd like to be an organ donor. But other parts of your speech were rather monotonic, and I run into that same problem for myself. So I know it's something that's a bit difficult to put that in there because you think that it's way too much, or I'm just going to put in a little, and it winds up being none. That's one of the things that I think you could work on a little bit more to engage us in your speech. You also had a good use of hand gestures. You personalized when you were talking about things from your perspective. You'd move your hand in when you were counting several different things that you were relaying to us. Although you had good hand gestures, your overall posture up here was pretty static. You can move around a bit more. You don't have to stay fixed. We have not nailed your shoes to the floor. That's another thing that I think would help with animating your speech a little bit more. You can lean forward. You can use some pauses. You had pauses, but you can use pauses to help emphasize a point. Your speech organization and structure was excellent, and using that letter, I thought, really added to your speech. You also gave us a perspective that we don't often get to hear, and that is how a family feels that has agreed to organ donation. We often will see about what happens to the people who receive it, but we don't always get to see what it's like for the people who were the source of the tissues. You gave the audience some specific things to do. You had a call for action in your speech, which I also thought was excellent. I'm really glad you offered to be our target speaker today, and I'm hoping I'll have a chance to hear another one of your speeches. Mr. Toastmaster?
I'd like to welcome our contest chairperson, Lurley Gayfield, back up.
Thank you, Darren. Don't get too far away. You're the president, so you get to help me hand these out. We will start with the evaluation portion. Everybody did a wonderful job, but we can only have a few of our participants advance to the Area 53 level. So please congratulate Jerome Manigan on 3rd place in the evaluation speech contest. Jerome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Our runner-up, finishing 2nd in the speech evaluation contest for the club, is Gary Reece. Gary. Oh, good, no swords. And representing TV Toastmasters at the Area 53 contest will be our Steve Ahrenholz. Steve Ahrenholz, congratulations, 1st place. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right. And now for our international speech contest portion, the first part that we actually had. 3rd place goes to Rick Barron. Rick, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops. Runner-up to represent TV Toastmasters at the Area 53 contest in the international speech contest is Gary Reece. Gary. And then our 1st place finisher for the international speech contest to move on to the Area 53 contest will be Steve Ahrenholz. Congratulations. You're the man today. Goodness gracious. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Everybody did a wonderful job. Thank you very much to our contestants for participating. Thank you very much to the judges for coming in sometimes at the last minute, walking in the door and saying, I'll be a judge, and for signing up ahead of time, those of you who were able to commit ahead of time.
Thank you, Laura Lee. One thing I learned last year was that even a club contest takes a tremendous amount of work from the Vice President of Education. So thank you very much for organizing our contest. Just a couple quick announcements. I'd like to thank our guests. 2 of our guests had to leave, but I'd like to thank Jill Neal, Doug Nordhausen, our target speaker. Doug, thank you very much. Bob Meyer, Heather Quelan, Josh Quelan, Veronica Sanford, and Joe Schwerling. And I would ask if any of our guests would like to come up and tell us what you thought of the meeting. All right. Veronica? Veronica will. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone who spoke as an evaluator or a speaker did phenomenally. It's been about a year since I've been at this club, and I've seen personally how much transformation there has been in each one of the people that I know so well and care about. I've seen personal development. People say that you stop growing when you're 5 years old and your personality is set, and I can swear today that that's not true. Everyone has really made incredible progress. It's just in their souls, in their hearts. So I just congratulate you all. Very good job.
Thank you, Veronica. Anyone else?
Darren. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody. On a personal note, I really benefited from today's meeting. Every single evaluation, I picked up at least one, if not several things that rung true and that I will work on. And just to reflect on your guys' club, it seems to me to be a very vibrant and energetic club. And I had a really nice time joining you at your meeting today, so thanks for having me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good job.
Just like to say it's been a great contest meeting, and I'm known as a procrastinator, but finally I'm getting around to, I'm going to have Carol and Sheila sign my donor on my driver's license, so encourage everybody to do that. You know, I just keep forgetting about it, and until I got some witnesses, so here I can have witnesses on television almost. So,
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else? Okay, one final announcement. Next meeting will be Saturday, March 21st. We are having our TV Toastmasters open house. That's here at the Anderson Community Television Station in Anderson Center. We're located in Anderson Township. Once again, it will be 9:05 until 11:30 a.m. Saturday, March 21st. We would love to have you join us today. Join us there in roughly a month. Today's meeting was a special meeting. It was a contest meeting. That anyone who would choose to come on that day would see a more standard Toastmasters meeting. Today was obviously a little bit atypical because it was a contest meeting. But with that, if there's no other business, I will close the meeting of TV Toastmasters Club 9523.